Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in this webinar that we proudly present to you. But before we go into the meat of the discussion, allow me to introduce myself and our other speaker for today. So I'm Anne Ordoña, the General Manager of Infinit Care. I look after our team's operations, client management, customer support, customer service teams. And with me today is Shyne Mangulabnan, our head of clinical care. Shyne, can you say hi?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Anne, for the intro.
So thanks, Shine. So I'm looking forward to the discussion today. But before we begin, I'd like to welcome those who are members already of Infinit Care. I believe we have participants who are part of our client partners today. So welcome, good afternoon. Let me know if you're able to type in the chat. You could just say hi, where are you calling from? Where are you dialing in from? We'd love you to engage in today's session. So kindly take use the chat space, and along the way, if you have questions, you can also type in the Q&A box. We will have a
Mhm.
Q&A session later. Ayan, Meron. Good
Right.
afternoon from
From
Taguig.
Taguig. Oo.
Wow.
Umuulan ba sa Taguig ngayon?
Ulan ba sa Taguig? Oo. Yan. So, um before we go into the topic, no, I'd like to just start as always by reminding everybody that our mental health is very important. We are talking about relationships and empathy today because it's an important element of looking after our well-being. At Infinite Care, we believe that your mental well-being encompasses your overall well-being. If you're not mentally okay, it really affects how you feel, how you act, how you handle stress, how you relate to others, and how you make choices. So it's very important for us to be able to understand that if we don't look after our mental health, our everything else gets affected. And that's why at Infinite Care, we really believe that mental health is for everybody. It's not just for those who are going through something or may pinagdadaanan, right? Mental health is just like physical health. We all have mental health. We all have positive and negative emotions that come and go depending on what's happening around us. And at Infinite Care, we often think about mental health as a continuum. So I hope most of you are in the green zone, if not all, today. Or if you are in the middle, hopefully after the session, you feel uplifted, you feel inspired to look after yourself, no? Again, a reminder to the members of Infinite Care here, please make sure that you maximize the platform. Um, there are several features there that were really designed for you to get the right kinds of support. Care can come in different forms. In some cases, you may really want to talk to one of our psychologists and counselors through our counseling sessions, but in some instances you may just want to do something on your own. So there are features there that are available for anyone, regardless of where you are in the continuum. And we're very happy that you're joining us today because one of our advocacies is really to normalize talking about mental health. And this is one of the avenues for us to do so. Okay, ang dami kong sinabi. So I think we begin, right? On nurturing. Our topic today is how do you nurture relationships with the power of empathy? And I'm very excited to dive into this topic because not only is it important in empathy, no, it's not only important in our personal and professional lives. We've seen, at least in Infinite Care, the data tells us that many of those who seek mental health support through our platform actually struggle with maintaining healthy relationships. And at the heart of it, we believe is that people just need to really start working on their communication skills, their listening skills, and latch on or leverage on the power of empathy. So empathy is more than just understanding someone's feelings. It's really about connection. And that's what we will talk about today. We will be exploring what it really means. We will explore why it's important. We will talk about the different types of relationships that you have, primarily your relationship with your partner, relationship with friends or peers, and relationships at work, no? Even with your boss. And so by the end of the session, we really hope that you will walk away with a greater appreciation for the role of empathy in your relationships and be feel equipped to have the tools to enhance your connections with others. So let's begin. What is empathy? And maybe for those who have an idea of what empathy is, you can again type in the chat. I've we've come across this really powerful short video by Brene Brown, and allow me to share this video because I think it really captures the essence of what empathy is. So let's play the video.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you can climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
What makes something better is connection, no? Oops. Teka. Okay. What makes something better is connection. And I really like how in that video, Brene Brown broke down elements of empathy, which is perspective taking, staying out of judgment, which is hard, right? Which is hard to not judge others, and recognizing emotion and communicating that. So empathy is really about connecting with people so we know that we're not alone when we are in struggle. It's a way to connect to the emotion in another person that another person is experiencing, and it doesn't require that we have experienced the same situation they're going through. So it's all about feeling with others. So given how much, in fact, this has become a buzzword, given how much it's being discussed as how important it is with relationships. Perhaps Shine, you could share or expound a bit on why is empathy really important
Mhm.
to consider?
Yeah. Thanks, Anne. No, I really love that video of Brené Brown, and I really enjoy reading her books also because such an eye opener for us. So when we talk kasi about empathy, there are different aspects that we want to also take into consideration. Say, for example, perspective taking. What does it mean when we talk about perspective taking in connection to empathy? Because when we say empathy, it involves putting ourselves in the person's shoe, in another person's shoe, right? You're seeing that, the world, what she's going through right now, through her own perspective. And when that is taken into consideration, this helps us create that sense of connection, that sense of understanding. And when there is understanding, right, there is connection. It fosters stronger connection. Oftentimes, we don't say naman na, 100% naiintindihan ko. Hindi din naman siya kailangan. Right? In the counseling profession, we don't completely say, oh, I understand what you're going through to your client or to your patient. But, imagining the what if it was me? How would it be? Right? Understanding that others' viewpoints, right, can be appreciated by their experiences, by their emotions, right? Pagdating naman sa emotional support, empathy allows us to provide emotional support, especially during times that are very difficult. When somebody's going through grief, when somebody's experiencing difficulty at work or at home or personal life, right? By acknowledging and validating the person's feelings, it's not only na tinutulungan natin siya to alleviate yung emotional burden, but it also strengthens our bond, right? When we show emotional support to people, we know that we're giving them the chance to be heard, the chance to be understood. And isn't that what we all need? No, we all need that. We want to be validated. We want to be understood. So this is crucial for our emotional well-being and crucial in building trust in relationship. Then in resolving conflict, so resolving conflict in all aspects, right? With your partners, at work, with your children, with friends even, no? So conflicts are normal, right? When conflicts arise, um, with empathy, we can de-escalate tense situations, right? Comes every now and then, no? But by understanding that there is an underlying emotion, where is the person coming from, and that there is a concern that is being experienced by a certain party or a certain person, when we show empathy, we can navigate through the conflict, not just by listening, but with compassion, right? Empathy actually promotes effective problem solving. And I think in terms of resolving conflict, it also helps maintain positive relationships, no? Even during conflict and even during the phase of disagreement. So, see, parang importante siya. Parang siyang oxygen eh. Parang oxygen sa empathy, no?
Right.
Mhm.
Thanks, Shine, for explaining that. And I wanted us to actually also talk about, before we even dive deeper into empathy, there are actually a lot of myths
Yeah.
surrounding empathy that clouds our understanding of it. These misconceptions can actually hinder our ability to fully embrace and practice empathy. So I think it's important that we debunk some myths around empathy.
Mhm.
One of the myths that I often hear about is we are either empathetic or we're not. Yeah, meaning parang some people are empath others are not, and if I'm not, therefore I can't really be expected, to practice empathy. So Shine, what do you think about this statement?
Yeah. Yeah, I think empathy is really not a fixed rate, no. Just like a lot of other things, by the way. It's not a fixed rate, but I think empathy is a skill that we can develop, dependent on your openness to learn, dependent on um um how you want to address it also. And in terms of nurturing it, no, it's dependent over time. Sabi mo nga, there are others na maybe naturally they're empath. They naturally exhibit mga high levels of empathy. But for others naman, it's a learning process. But you know what? Everybody has the potential to enhance their empathetic abilities. No, as long as there is that self-awareness, there is that conscious effort and practice, o kala mo ang dali-dali, no? Of course, all work in progress, kaya siya. Kaya siyang i-practice at kaya siyang ma-achieve.
Right. So
Mm.
empathy can be learned. We can work on it. Uh, and I think because at the heart of it is about understanding others, it starts by being curious, I think, on what another
Mm.
person feels. So if you're more cognitive, if you feel that you're more like a cognitive person than an emotional person, start with that curiosity about another
Yeah.
person. I think.
Yeah.
Another myth that I actually encounter a lot, having worked for more than, ni-reveal ko pa yung age ko, having
Wag na,
having
Ann.
worked in the corporate world for for XX years,
Oo.
um, empathy is inappropriate in the workplace. We often hear, this prevalent myth, and the misconception actually stems from the idea that emotions and professionalism are mutually exclusive, or they cannot coexist,
Mhm.
at work, and how if you show empathy, it could undermine your authority, for example, especially if you're the boss, let's say. But I think for me, and Shine, you may add as well, no,
Mhm.
it couldn't be further from the truth. It's true that, to an extent you do have to manage emotions in the workplace, but empathy really plays a crucial role in creating that healthy work environment, right?
Mhm.
If
Mhm.
you are able to understand, and share the feelings of others, when you apply it in the workplace, it can actually help in collaboration, it can help in working with others in terms of a project or delivering something together. It allows people to share experiences more authentically. You create a sense of community and belonging, so which is really essential if you want a motivated
Yeah.
team. And you
Yeah.
mentioned earlier on why empathy is important. You talked about conflict
Yeah.
resolution, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
When you understand the perspective and the emotions of others, you can actually, well, for the lack of a better term, you can negotiate from a position of actually trying to understand how to find a solution that's helpful for any
For
party.
everyone. Mm.
And it not only helps in resolving conflict, but it also helps in really establishing a long-term relationship built on mutual respect, right? So I study leadership. I forgot to share that in my introduction. I study leadership, and empathetic leaders are actually better equipped to inspire and motivate others. So gone are the days when we view leaders as, very formal. There's a very
Turn.
austere, very parang there's a line separating them from their team members. There are a lot of studies that show that when you create that environment where people feel that they can speak up and that they can
Mhm.
relate to the leader,
Mhm.
innovation and creativity can actually thrive. Do you have anything to add to that, Shine?
Yeah. And you mentioned, the people get motivated when empathy is applied in the workplace, and that is what we all need. Why? Why does it create um, motivation? It's because when somebody is being heard, somebody is being understood in the workplace, for example, that person would want to contribute more, no? Or that person would feel like, oh, I'm being heard in this company, so I'll give back also. Or I feel like I belong. And this is like, it's a community, it's a family. So I'll thrive harder, right? Para siyang win-win scenario if you look at it.
Thanks for that perspective, Shine. One of the final myths that we will tackle today is also how helping others or connecting with others or being empathetic with others can cause us. So the assumption here is that when you empathize with someone, you somehow lose something of yourself. What do you think about this, Shine?
Yeah. Um, it's contrary to popular belief, no. Helping others doesn't always come at a personal cost. In fact, this is gonna be a bit long. I'm going to share lang. In fact, acts of kindness and support can actually be mutually beneficial. Hindi lang dun sa tao tinutulungan mo, but also for yourself. Why? Because number one, we know that when we are capable or we feel good in helping others, it boosts happiness. When we engage in behaviors that can increase our own sense of usefulness, yung sense of well-being natin and happiness, we know that research tells us, no, that helping others does something to our endorphins, right? It creates that, yung tinatawag natin na, ba yun? Helper's high, right? Now, when
Mm.
we're supporting other people, right, it releases that endorphin. Not just that, when we're also helping other people, can you imagine you're building relationships by providing support that can strengthen the relationship that you have? And it creates a new network for you, right? A new possibility, right? That when you help others, you're also fostering yung sense mo of family, yung sense mo of togetherness, yung sense mo of family. And another one that I want to point out is that it when you practice it kasi, when it's something that you practice continuously, that can also enhance your skill. So for those na sabi, I'm not so empathetic or I haven't been so empathetic, I don't know what being empathetic is, you continuously help others and then hindi mo alam, it's enhances your skill of being empathetic is already being enhanced, right? It can enhance, especially in the workplace, it can also enhance your personal and your professional growth. It also improves our mental health when we help others. Acts of kindness, di ba? When we volunteer, when we listen to others, it's linked to lower rates of depression and anxiety, right? When we have the capacity to help other people. Because why? It gives us that sense of purpose. It gives us that that sense of we are being useful and it reduces the stress. Lastly, when we help others, we know how much it creates positive impact. And that's what we all need, right? The positive effects of helping can very much extend beyond our own, our individual self. So we create ripple effect yan, no? Pag nakakatulong ka sa iba, that person you're helping would feel so good. I'll pass this on also to others, no? We need to understand that when we help others, it doesn't always cost us anything. We embrace the opportunities to support those around us, and in return, it can help us lead a more fulfilled, more it can give us personal fulfillment and can also take care of our well-being. No, so ang lungkot ng myth na yan, di ba, Ann?
Oh, malungkot. Kasi
Ano?
parang I think this, whoever says this, sorry kung may matamaan, but whoever says this kasi is, I guess, they had an upbringing or they had some trauma perhaps that actually sort of influence how they think about connection. And
Mhm, mhm.
I think that's why it's important that we always revisit our beliefs because it's possible that it's our belief that is hindering us from getting the most out of our relationship. So
Mhm.
I think now it's good to shift our focus to therefore, because I saw some of the questions already, like how do you enhance your sense of empathy, what's the approach. So I think
Mhm.
let's discuss now what could we do, no, especially in specific relationships that we have. So I think we begin with one of the most important relationships that people would have, which is their partners, no. Being empathetic to your partner is important for a loving and enduring relationship. Pero what are practical tips for you to actually be able to practice empathy in relating with your partner?
Mhm. Sana I'm walking the talk 'no, Ann. Tamaan naman
Okay.
ako, pero at least, wake up call. Yeah, listening attentively. Ano ba siya? Listening attentively would mean, focusing. I think focusing 100%. When the other person's talking, or when your partner is talking, you avoid distractions. You put down your phone, right? And I think for the counselors, or kami no, si Anne does coaching, I do counseling, yung using mga non-verbal cues like okay, nodding, eye contact, just to show na we're also engaged. And I think yung hindi tayo nagmamadaling mag-share nung thoughts natin, or papagalitan natin yung partner, kasi naman, ba't mo ginawa yun? 'Di ba sinabi ko yun?" Oh. So that's not listening attentively. Ask questions, be genuine when you ask questions, show genuine interest, and you wait for the response then of the person. Um Ask open-ended questions, no? "Oh, bakit mo nasabi yun? Eh, why are you feeling that way?" O parang pang-counseling. But yeah, I think we should be able to apply that in our relationships. And then validating feelings, I think it's acknowledging the person's emotions without your own judgment muna. Saying na, "Okay, sorry you feel that way. Parang ang hirap-hirap ha, or parang you're going through a tough time right now." 'No, para ano bang puwede kong gawin? Ano bang gusto mong pag-usapan? 'No? And ito parang consider their perspective. Minsan kasi we can't help but be judgmental, 'no, at the back of our head, "Oh my gosh, bakit mo kasi ginawa yun? Eh, sinabi ko naman sa'yo, 'wag mo na gawin yun." But always, this is something that we want to practice, no, to consider their perspective. Consider the other person's perspective. Try, now, what if it was you? Try to put yourself in your shoe and see that situation from a different viewpoint. And perhaps when you do that, it can actually change your perspective of things. It makes you more compassionate towards the person. No? Reflect that if it was you in that situation, in that position, how would you feel? How would you react? Right? Sometimes we just don't do this when we're talking, no? Magandang practice din siya in every situation in our life. Yung to reflect, okay, what if it was me? How would it be? Right? And I think if we learn to practice that with everything that we do, not just in our relationships, but at work, with our everyday interactions, right? There's less stress and better interaction. Now, avoid blame. Hirap naman ito, avoid blame, no? Focusing on
Mm.
understanding and really supporting the person than finding a reason to blame. Parang, kasi sabi ko sa'yo, or sana, if you thought about it twice, wala na yon. No? Because sometimes when a person makes that decision, baka, at that moment, that was the decision that worked for that person. Maybe at that time, that was the only reaction the person had. So we cannot say, oh, sana you thought twice about it, right? And avoid blaming, I think, is, being more compassionate, not just in your actions, but especially in your language when you're talking to the person, right? Being compassionate, or sometimes, like what the video says, no? It's better to say, "Oh, I really don't know what to say right now," or "I'm sorry you're going through this right now," instead of saying something else that might trigger, or might make the person feel um na she's being judged. No? Yeah.
Thanks for that, Shine. Before we move on to the next question, no, I think we're not saying here that the two of us are experts on empathy. You would hear the two of us actually say, "Oh gosh, that's a note to self," or "Oh, that's a reminder to me." Because
Yeah.
I think practicing empathy, um improving our listening skills, being able to take the perspective of others, it's a journey.
Mhm,
It's
mhm,
important to recognize that all of us are works in progress, right? That
mhm,
we
mhm,
that's part of being human. Nobody gets it right all the time, but for as long as you're willing to work on it, that's really the very essence of nurturing a relationship, diba? So I just wanted
yeah.
to see that because I think I'm seeing already a lot of good questions in the Q&A. Let's learn from each other as well. So perhaps our audience here, Shine, have also tips later on for us, diba,
Mhm,
on how they
yeah.
practice empathy.
We
Um,
learn from you guys
we learn
also.
from you guys too. So I think the next part is, of course, outside of our partners, a big chunk of our social lives revolves around friendships. This is an important aspect of our being social beings. So how do you practice being more empathetic to your friends? What are practical ways that you can share? And I'm sure I actually wrote there, it could be the same as your partner, but any thoughts, Shine, on building more empathetic connections with your friends?
Mhm. Yeah, that's hard, no? Because pag sa friends, um, you know how it is, diba? We're in the mental health industry, ano, and you know how it is, no? When we tell, like, when we do our counseling sessions, we hear it a lot from people. They say, oh, gulong-gulo na kasi ako kasi itong friend ko na to, ito yung sinasabi na, yung isa naman, ito yung sinasabi na. And that's when you go to a mental health professional, diba? Kasi parang walang biases. To answer your question, I think yung active listening, yun yung unang-una eh. Yung we let the person talk and we let the person feel na ano ba itong nararamdaman mo? Ano ba itong gino-go through mo talaga? Anong gusto mong gawin? Right? I think ultimately, yun yung question na gusto mong itanong doon sa tao. Ano sa tingin mo yung makakatulong sa'yo? Right? Because with our friends, especially if you're so comfortable with each other, you've been friends since what? Since elementary, since high school, ang bilis na lang magsabi na, ano ka ba, huwag mong gawin yan, para kang tanga. Diba? Sorry for the term. Or you might regret that, right? But we're not showing empathy when we blurt out words like that. So instead, ask, what do you think can work for you right now? What are you feeling? What do you want to do? And then when the person tells you, oh, this is what I want to do. Okay, do you think that would be helpful? O sige, let's try. And no matter what the decision of your friend is, ultimately, ikaw, as a friend, andun ka to support. Diba? Yeah, I think, no, that's
Mm,
for me, is the most pinaka-practical way
mm,
to handle it.
mm.
Mhm.
Thanks, Shine. Um, I think I want to ask the audience, maybe you could type in the chat, sino dito ang may team members who are leaders, who are people who actually have subordinates working with you? Um, Empathetic leadership is one of the buzz terms nga ngayon, no? Parang you have to be
Mm-mm.
more compassionate as a leader, you have to be more empathetic. Perhaps I would like to find out how many are leaders or how are working with people under them in the chat. It would be great to see also if you feel the same way. So with this question, allow me to begin, no? Parang if you think about leadership, empathy is actually a cornerstone of leadership. Um, it's how you make your team members feel that they are valued, they are understood, and you are able to motivate them. But how do you actually cultivate and demonstrate that? So I think the first thing is really being attentive. Pay
Mhm.
close attention to your team members. I wrote an example there. Watch for signs of burnout, especially in this day and age now where we are working hybrid. In our
Yeah.
case at Infinite Care, we only see each other once or twice a month. So most of the time we see each other through screens. So how do you make sure that you're paying attention? This really means being observant, watchful for signs of stress, especially if you're in a leadership position. You have to be able to recognize signs early, so that you can intervene and even offer support, whether it's providing, help in the work, adjusting the workload, or simply having a compassionate conversation. And it really happens, it could come naturally if you invest time in getting to know your team members. Like you
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to see the signs and symptoms if you don't know how they act normally. Like if you're some of the signs are often subtle, right? So for
That's true.
example, usually a person is very engaged, laging nag-contribute in a discussion, but then somehow medyo quiet the last few days. You should be able to check in on that person, say, hey, I noticed that. How are you?
Mhm.
Right? So
Mhm.
paying attention is important. The second point is showing vulnerability. Um, I think this is related to the earlier myth about, do you show emotions, you become more or just, present yourself in a very professional manner. I think as leaders, we need to be able to share our own challenges and acknowledge our own imperfections, right? When leaders actually admit that they don't know everything and that they're willing to ask for help, it
Mhm.
humanizes them and encourages team members to actually reach out and ask for support. So it encourages for a more open and authentic, relationship in the work. Um, One other tip that you could practice, no, that you can do to practice empathy, is to unplug and be present. Especially in the digital age, there's so much distraction. Even while doing one-on-ones, especially if it's virtual, it's so easy to open all of the other tabs and just, nod lang kunwari as if you're listening to the other person. Or even if it's an in-person conversation, so easy to get distracted by your phone or even your laptop. It's open in front of you. So I think as leaders, or even as, as a colleague where a team member approaches you and wants to talk, um give your full attention, be present for that person, put away your device. That only Not only does that show respect, right? But it also ensures that you truly are listening and that you are keen to understand their concerns and perspective. And then last but not the least, it's all about building that self-awareness. Leaders must first understand their own emotions. In fact, self-awareness is one of the cornerstones of building emotional intelligence. No, being aware of your own emotional state and how it affects your behavior, you can then
Mhm.
better manage your own reactions and interactions with other people. And this self-awareness is actually the foundation for empathizing with others, because
Mhm.
how can you empathize with others if you don't know yourself,
Right.
right?
Right.
So in summary for me, it's paying attention, it's being willing to show your authentic self, it's making sure that when you are with others, you are present, you unplug, and you work on yourself
Mhm.
constantly.
Mhm.
That will really help you build that skill. And I should know because now I'll practice vulnerability. When I took, for example, this Gallup strengths finder assessment, empathy was one of my lowest um behaviors, no, strengths, because and I personally thought that I cannot be empathetic. But at the end of the day, all of these four simple things is really what you need to do. You just have to be more human, I think,
Yeah.
if you want to practice empathy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to add
Yeah.
something there, Shine?
Mhm. Yeah, very well said, ano. I'd want to touch base on what you said about self-awareness. Yeah, that's very important. Ang hirap, no? Self-awareness, self-awareness. Parang hirap. But really, I think I remember, when I was reading Brené Brown's one of her leadership book that says that empathy really requires for us to do reflection. Kaya yung self-awareness, no? It requires for us to reflect, to recall on feelings that are very uncomfortable. And when we're capable of recognizing feelings like I'm scared, I'm confused, I'm frustrated, diba? Parang all internal, we're also trying to take the perspective with another person. So choosing empathy versus sympathy, or, you know, understanding na ito yun eh. Ito yung mga feelings na nararamdaman ng tao, and you're also familiar with that, it will be easier for you to empathize. No, it's also easier for you to build that connection, not just with the other person, but most of all with yourself. So yun naman yung kinagandahan, I think, ng empathy, because you practice it towards others, and then you're also gaining so much from it. You're practicing it for yourself.
Right. And so before we move on to the questions no that our audience has posed, let me wrap up if we started with the video, medyo fans kami ni Brené Brown. If we started with the video and empathy, let us end with a quote on empathy. Empathy has no script. So there's really no formula, right? There's no
Yeah.
right way or wrong way to do it. It's simply listening, holding space, withholding judgment, emotionally connecting, and communicating that incredibly healing message of you are
You're not
not alone. Right? And so I really love this quote because many people, especially the ones that are more task oriented or more um less attuned with their feelings, struggle with the idea of how do I connect with someone. But even just staying silent and listening and holding space for the other person to share with you, withholding your judgment, already communicates volumes
Mhm,
that you are not
mhm.
alone. So
Yeah.
thank you for listening to us. Now, I'm most excited actually in tackling the questions that are already in the chat.
Hot
If
box.
you have questions, please type them in the Q&A. Let's begin. I think some we discussed, but it's okay. We can emphasize certain points, no? So, the first question here, what's the best approach to get the perspective of the
Mhm,
person you wish to empathize with?
mhm. The perspective, no? I think, yeah, it briefly lang, like what we've discussed earlier, it's the listening, right? Making sure that we're actively listening to the person. Ay, sinagot ko na, Ann, ha? Um,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, the active listening, the non-judgmental, no? The non-judgmental reaction to the person. Just to build again on what Anne mentioned, sometimes naman when a person shares to us something, rarely can a response make something better. Agree? Kasi sometimes you have your own ideas now. Ito naman yung gusto ko talagang mangyari. Whatever that person gives you, it's not going to make it better 100%. But what makes something better is yung connection. Na, okay, sorry ha, that's how you're feeling right now. Parang the quiet na listening is there. Because when we're facing a difficult situation, when we're challenged, hindi naman tayo naghahanap ng magic response, 'di ba? Minsan, ang dami nating tinatanungan na friends para lang mahanap natin. But whatever response that is not going to fix everything. It's not going to fix anything. We're usually looking for someone who can make us feel like, okay, I'm with you. I know. I know it can be difficult. I may not be able to help you solve the problem, but I'm listening. We're looking for somebody who's also been through the process, who's also been in that situation. And we're looking for that deep connection, no? Because I think that's really what empathy is all about. No, the connection more than the words that are being thrown at you, or more than the processing of ideas. So it's really sitting there with a person and building that genuine connection.
Thanks, Shine. If I may
Mhm.
add,
Go ahead.
my answer is less about um taking the perspective of the person, of a specific person, but about perspective taking in general, no.
Mm,
When we think about perspective taking, means that you have to actually learn how to engage with different viewpoints. Um and that's also another skill that can be worked on. So what do I mean by learning how to engage with different viewpoints? You have to be comfortable with other people's perspectives. I think right now the challenge with being in social media, for example, 'di ba? Parang echo chamber yung mga spaces natin, because we're with the
yeah.
same kind of people, right?
Yeah.
We're with
Yeah.
the same kind of people and we're sharing the same things. But it's important to widen your perspective by
Mhm.
engaging with other people that are not so much like you. You could read books, you could watch
Mhm.
movies, you
Mhm.
could have conversations that will expose you to others who don't think necessarily the same way as you. So it's a muscle that can be strengthened, I think.
Yeah.
Because the reason that you struggle to get the perspective of another person is you're so married to your own perspective, 'di ba? So it's something
Correct.
that you should really be more deliberate in terms of practicing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Ay, ang dami ng
Okay.
tanong.
Ang
Sorry.
dami
Sige,
ng
mahaba
questions,
yung
Anne.
drama ko. Sige.
Oo.
How does one enhance their sense of
Of
empathy?
empathy. Oo. Nice question. Sige, I'll answer that first. For me, it's developing your own emotional awareness, right? Being able to tune into your own emotions, um, being able to name the challenges, the fears, the anxiety, learning to recognize and understand that, okay, these are all normal for me. Being compassionate to myself na, shucks, hindi talaga ako perfect. Bakit ko ba to nararamdaman ngayon? Bakit ko ba to iniisip ngayon? You know, tuning into your own emotions will also help you become more compassionate towards other people. And when you're compassionate towards other people, that connects. Now, you're connecting your emotions to your own experiences, and it's easier for you to empathize to people. And again, yung practicing ng compassion. So that's one, being emotionally aware. And number two, being compassionate to yourself. You know why? Because the way that you show kindness, sabi nga nila, di ba, the relationship that you have with yourself very much dictates the kind of relationship that you have with other people, with others, right? So when you practice compassion, you're kind to yourself, you're understanding to yourself, you're deliberate with rest, you're taking care of yourself, especially during the times when it's difficult to do that, because we all go through that, right? So it's easier for you to offer encouragement and support to others kung alam mong ikaw forgiving ka sa sarili mo. No? So I think those two, for me, will very much help you enhance yung sense of empathy mo.
Right. And related
Mhm.
related to that, I think we need to be able to cultivate mindfulness and be present, no.
Mhm.
Medyo yun yung theme ko, eh. Like parang if you want to practice the skill of empathizing with others, you have to practice also being more aware of your own emotions, and that actually requires being quiet, being mindful, taking
Mhm.
time to pause, taking time to reflect, right? Okay, this is
Yeah.
a very interesting question. How do I provide emotional support to someone who sees themselves as not worthy or are self-sabotaging?
Mahirap.
Ikaw
Mm.
muna.
That's ako muna kasi
Ikaw
mahirap,
muna,
grabe
mahirap
ka, Ann.
eh.
Oo. Ang hirap
Oo.
nga, oo. Kasi when you talk about you listen without judgment, paano nga nagle-listen ka without judgment and that person's venting out so much about I'm doing this, I'm really bad at this. 'Di ba? in some ways it also makes you feel bad that this person's looking at herself or looking at himself that way. I think yung listening without judgment, because that's what I really like, kasi yung parang ako, I believe everybody comes from different, we grew up in different families, we have our own different challenges and experiences. So maybe offering yung unconditional acceptance na, okay, nagigets ko, you're feeling so low right now, you're feeling like a loser right now. Offering that unconditional acceptance would also mean you're compassionate to what that person's going through. Na regardless of ano man yung nagawa niya, ano man yung nasabi niya, ano man yung mistake sa tingin niya na ginawa niya, you're reminding that person that, you know what, we all go through our own struggles. Kanya-kanya lang tayong challenges. Like what you've mentioned earlier, we all just go through a different mental health continuum. Right now, this is where you are. It's a struggle for you. And you're deserving still of love, of course. You're deserving of support. And that's why I'm here. I'm listening to you. I think yun, yung judgment, yung listening without judgment and really giving the unconditional acceptance. I know sometimes it's a challenge, easier said than done, but again, empathy is a skill that we can hone, that we can practice over time. Okay?
I think an important element, especially if someone is feeling unworthy or self-sabotaging, so perhaps that person is expressing um emotions or feelings
Mm-hmm.
that they about themselves, no, it's important. I think there's a thin line. I think it's important that you validate, like you cannot, the more that you invalidate what they're feeling, the more that they feel that this, like you're being dismissive. So I think you could really also say, oh, I can, parang yung it's okay to feel that way. Like
Mm-hmm.
you have to also lead with validation, because this is a person perhaps that doesn't have good self-esteem, diba? So
Yeah.
it's important that you do that. And I think it's also important not to put it on yourself, that especially if this person is showing signs that they're not listening to you, or they refuse to listen to you. I think this would be a good opportunity to also suggest if they'd like to seek for professional help, no?
Counseling. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
they're open to it, suggest, hey, I think that it would be helpful that you find that you're able to talk to someone
Mm-hmm.
on how to manage this, because let's face it, especially with those who are self-sabotaging, it may be
Yeah.
harder to
Yeah.
handle them,
Yeah.
'di ba?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ang daming gandang tanong. Baka
Oo,
pwede tayo
ang ganda.
mag-extend onte for the Q&A. Sige,
Mm-mm. These are really
where do
nice questions.
right. Okay, here's another question. Where do we draw the line between empathizing and solving the problem for the other person?
Yeah, that's hard. No,
I
it's
can
really
I can
hard.
start. I can
Sige,
start.
Anne, go.
Um I think it's 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 important first that you ask a person what they need.
Mm-hmm,
Um
mm-hmm.
a lot of people, especially those who feel responsible for their friend, for their partner, would want to fix the issue, and just provide direct solutions. But I think it's important that you start by understanding what the person needs.
Mm-hmm.
It's a simple ask. For example, how would you like me to to
Help.
to be with you now? Because sometimes that person may probably just say, I just want you to listen. So I think
Mm-hmm,
resist the urge to fix it right away.
mm-hmm.
Ask what the person needs. I'm talking to myself also here. Ask what the person needs. Um respect respect, I think, their their autonomy. Meaning, especially if you're, I don't know kasi if what's your relationship with this person. I'm now speaking as a leader, not talking to a colleague. So it's so tempting to
Mm-hmm.
actually solve an issue for someone. But respect that that person has the autonomy, has the capability to actually have the answers themselves. So this is one of the tenets of coaching, actually, that the answer lies in the individual, not
Right.
you know and your role is perhaps just to ask them questions that will help unblock them or will help them articulate for themselves, ay, ito pala yung kailangan kong gawin.
Mhm.
So, instead of, for example, thinking about solutions, focus on asking questions for the person so that you could really work on, empathizing with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I like that, Ano, when you said that you have to find clarity. What is it, what's needed? And sometimes when you ask that question, you're also helping the person figure out the solution on their own. So when that happens, we don't have kasi to be the one to solve it, right? We don't have to be the one to give the answers. And sometimes we don't even have to figure out the answers right then and there. So instead of saying, okay, eto, baka pwede mo itong gawin, baka ask mo rin yung tao, ano sa tingin mo kaya yung makakabuti? Ano pa yung hindi mo nagawa? Right? And ano sa tingin mo ang pwede mo pang gawin? Right? And I think you know within yourself, you're also clear within yourself kung ano lang yung kaya mong maitulong at ano yung kaya mong maibigay na attention, na focus, na listening. Because oftentimes, we also have our own struggles that we have to deal with. So you have to be clear also with your own boundaries as to what are you willing, how are you willing to listen, what are you willing to help, right? And you communicate that also with the person. Now, oops, ito yung pwede kong matulong. But understand within yourself that if it's too much also for you, you don't have to force yourself. No?
Okay. Shine, there are still 11 unanswered questions. So here's what we'll do. I hope it's okay with you. We'll extend by about 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
We'll answer as much as we can. If we're unable to answer within that time period, we will do a follow-up talk. We will do a we'll come up with another session. I think this really just goes to show how relationships are very important, no?
Yes.
And
Yes.
we always see that in Infinite Care, actually, that the quality of your relationships actually dictate the quality of your well-being as an
Yeah.
individual. So thank you very much for engaging with us. Sige, there's another question here. I like this. How will I know if I'm over empathizing with someone? I feel that when I let friends be sad, then I empathize with them. Sometimes I might not be helpful, especially if I might be cuddling them already.
Yeah. For me, wala naman sigurong such thing as over-empathizing, 'di ba? Whenever the person's ready, that's the time na okay, they will get back up. Because even if you say the person's going through something, she's crying, she's so sad, she doesn't want to get out of the house, she doesn't want to do anything. Yeah, you can encourage. You can say, oh, parang labas ka naman. Or parang, oh, let's do something else. You're also empathizing, no? Parang encouraging that person to do something. However, in the end, right, you mentioned a while ago, Anne, about autonomy, right? Letting that person
Mm,
decide also for herself or himself na ano bang gusto kong mangyari nga naman. 'Di ba? Because for me, I don't think there is such a thing as over-empathizing. Right? Just let the person be. It all boils down to respecting when the person's
mm,
ready to get out of that um situation. But if you see that it's it's detrimental already to the mental well-being of the person or the physical health, not eating anymore or so depressed already, then please encourage that person to seek mental health um
mm,
help, no? Mhm.
mm. Okay, I think this question is meant for me. If you're a line manager, how do you drive performance while still being empathetic?
Mhm. Mhm.
I think well, it's a like, if you know how to answer this question, then if you know how to balance this, then really you've unlocked the secret to great leadership. I think at the
Yeah.
end of the day, because we are working with people, right? And they're not machines. You can't just drive performance lang. You have
Mhm.
to be
Mhm.
empathetic. On the flip side, if you lean towards I think I don't want to use over empathy, but if you lean towards just, letting the person act without accountability, right?
Mhm.
Um, it does not serve the person, and it also does not serve the organization. So therefore, what is that balancing act? And I
Mhm.
think part of it, especially in the work setting, is making it clear that accountability is key, right? Team mem Let's give a very specific example. Let's say someone is going through a personal problem. Um and that person perhaps is showing behaviors that is hindering them from performing their tasks well, performing their tasks in a timely manner, for example. So I think what I would do in that situation is lead with empathy first. Ask what's going on.
Mhm. Mhm.
Ask the person what he needs. And then you discuss together how you could provide that support while at the same time that person sort of eases into going back to his past performance level, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
in that case, you are showing your support, but you're also making sure that that person continues to be accountable for their performance, because at the
Right.
end of the day, it's the workplace, 'di ba?
Right.
And that there are actually consequences of not meeting expectations. But um because what you don't want to happen is that you are letting a person off the hook, right? And you're not able to maintain fairness and trust in your team consistently, because it will affect how others also perceive you as a leader. So easier said than done, right? Because again, we're working with humans. No?
Mhm. 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 Yeah.
Okay. Sige, let's go through other questions. Ang dami.
Mhm. Ang
I
dami.
think there are questions that are related, so I'll lump them together. Shine. How do
Yeah.
you empathize with someone you don't agree with, or someone you hate, or a person you dislike?
Hirap naman, eh. Um,
Oo.
yeah, I think, empathy naman, I don't know, does it always have to be, kasi it's like this, ang hirap maawa sa isang tao kung ayaw mo naman siya, right? But, we're all human. And we go through, like what I said, we go through different challenges every so often. Kung hindi mo din naman talagang makuhang mag-empathize, just be kind enough to not say anything. No? Hindi din yung tipong because you don't agree with the person. Empathy kasi is not entirely agreeing, right? It's also imagining na what if ako yun? What if ako yung, it's not about, oh, dapat ganun yung feeling niya. Dapat ganun yung feeling ko towards it because that's how she is. I don't think empathy is that way. Empathy is more of, yeah, what if it happened to me? How would it be? How would I feel? So having that kindness towards that person, right? Having that kindness na she's probably going through something bad. She's probably going through something difficult right now. And yeah, you don't have to like the person. If you hate the person, it's also not impossible for you to feel empathy towards the person, I think it all boils down to just being kind, no, not being judgmental, and most of all, not saying anything nasty or not saying anything that will make the person feel all the more down or make the person feel all the more bad.
Yeah. And it's important because we were talking about empathy involving perspective taking, 'di ba?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think it's important that you also reflect on your own biases.
Right.
Because you may already be prejudiced against a person, and
Mm.
it is affecting how you are dealing with that person. So I think goes back na all of these concepts are connected. Practicing self-awareness so you know what are your biases, what are your
Judgments.
judgment, like how you behave typically, so that you could be more aware of the way you relate to another person.
Yeah.
You don't have to be friends with
Mm-hmm,
that person
mm-hmm.
naman eh.
To show empathy.
And especially if it's in a work setting, it's just really focusing, for example, on the outcome. Let's say you
Mm-hmm.
have a common project, you can focus on the outcome, but then I think you could be respectful and discuss with the person, what is going on, what is stopping you from doing this again,
Mhm.
but without judgment,
Yeah.
so you can maintain that professionalism, you can set that boundary because you don't have to like the person.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think as well, no, but I think it calls for us to actually do some self reflection, no? So bakit nga
Yeah.
ba ayaw ng taong to, right? Okay. I think we'll have to choose because we have 5 minutes to go.
Mhm.
I'll
Mhm.
check for questions that are quite different. Hang on, ha. What would you say are the biggest
Yeah.
blockers
Yeah.
to empathize with someone, and how do we overcome this?
Yeah. I think going back, now it's all interconnected. A biggest blocker to not be able to empathize with the person is like what Anne mentioned earlier, when you have your own biases. When you're also, for me, it's when you're not compassionate towards yourself. When you're not kind and you're not forgiving towards yourself, it will be so difficult for you to empathize towards others. And that becomes a blocker. And to address the second question, how do we overcome these? Self awareness. It's
Mm,
always, we are works in progress, right? We can be a masterpiece at the same time a work in progress. And we continue to do that. We continue to find ways to better ourselves, whether it's from the people we talk to, it's the profession that we take in. Um, I think we learn from that. We learn from every relationship, from every interaction that we have, so that we can overcome it. And forgiveness, diba? For being forgiving, being accepting of who we are, will really build, um, will really help us build empathy also towards
mm.
others.
Second to the last question. When you're emotionally unavailable and not ready to listen or empathize with someone,
Mm,
how do we say it kindly to our partner or friend?
hirap, no? You're not okay. I think the bottom line is we're not used kasi to having conversations like this. I don't know. I don't know. Like, I don't know with today's generation, baka iba. Para namang tanda na natin ang today's
Uh,
generation though. Anyway, I think if it's not something that's sitting well with you and you're going through a lot also, you're going through your own challenges, just be honest enough to say, oh, I'm sorry, I cannot deal with that right now. Would you want me to connect you to somebody who can help you? I think a person would appreciate that, no? Na you're honest enough to say, I cannot also accommodate it. But offer also other forms, such as, or you want to book a counseling session with somebody? Do you want to talk to somebody? Can I offer you um someone else to talk to? Now, it doesn't have to be you. And empathy naman comes in many different forms, right?
yeah.
If you cannot sit through that conversation, you cannot sit through the person crying or venting out because it's too draining for you, it's too much for you, please say so. That way, you're also showing compassion to yourself. Remember, empathy begins from being compassionate and being honest with yourself, going back, reflecting towards you, and getting to know the uncomfortable emotions and feelings that you have.
Right.
Mhm.
Um, I was gonna say that honesty. I 100% agree with Shines. Begin with honesty. But you don't have to be dismissive of the person.
Mhm, mhm.
You could say, I care about you, but I'm not in the right emotional space at the moment to listen fully, because I want to be when I'm with you, I really want to be able to be present, and I'm afraid I can't do that. So you have to come from a place of, I care about you. I'm just not the right person at this point in
Mhm,
time.
mhm.
And you could even say, I'm still here. I'm still here. Perhaps we could find a time within the next week to
Yeah.
catch up. In the meantime, I mean, being open with your own struggles can actually even strengthen that conversation, because that person would then also feel like, oh, I'm not alone. We're all going
Mhm.
through challenges, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, so we will save the question so that we could tackle them in a future conversation. Um, okay, let me see. I think some are already have already been answered.
Yeah.
Okay, let's use this other because this is about giving advice. How would you give advice to a sister or a family member going through a difficult situation when you're not used to giving advice to each other and it feels slightly awkward?
Hmm.
Kasi it could be that hindi ka ganyan talaga mag-act
Mhm, mhm.
and they
Hindi
know
kayo
you,
sanay. Oo,
hindi
and
kayo
it can be
sanay.
awkward, 'di ba? Parang
Yes.
sasabihin mo, tapos titingnan ka na kapal naman, "Anong pinagsasabi mo?" 'Di ba? Baka
Oo.
mapahiya ka na lang. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, if you're not used to it, you know what? Because you're asking this question, aware ka. You're aware that,
Mm.
oops, hindi kami sanay, pero alam ko my sister's going through something and I'd want to be able to talk to my sister. So congratulations to you for actually bringing that up and having that self-awareness right now that, yeah, this is how it is for me. This is difficult for us. But you know what? It all boils down also to when we really care about the person, we really love your sister, you will overcome that. You will learn to sit through the difficult emotions with your sister. You will learn to sit through the awkwardness in order to help that person. Diba? And again, ask. Um, you can say something like, I know we're not used to doing this, but I see it's probably difficult for you. You're struggling right now. Ano bang pwede kong magawa? Alam ko, hindi naman
Mm.
tayo sanay with this. I mean, we can, diba? We're all adults. And there is something beautiful with continuously seeking what we are not comfortable with, especially in nurturing our relationships. And what more, no? If it's a relationship with a family, no matter how uncomfortable it is, right?
Mm.
No matter how scary it can be, you know that
Mm.
the results, the things that you will reap also moving forward will be beautiful.
Right.
No?
I'm gonna say embrace the awkwardness, because the outcome will be worth it anyway, right?
Mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
you could say, I'm not used to talking about feelings, but I really want to understand you. Or you could say, oh, this is gonna sound awkward coming from me. However, or I really wanna be there for you. So embrace the awkward. Nobody is perfect.
Mm-hmm,
Not
mm-hmm.
all of us may not many of us don't necessarily know what to say. And that's why I really love that quote that we showed. There is no script. There is no script. There's no right way or wrong way to do it. But if you
Mm-hmm.
hold space for that person, then you're really already communicating to them that you're there for them.
Mm-hmm.
And with
Yeah.
that, I'm so sorry that we could not answer all of the questions. We have ran over time, but thank you for those of you who stayed and listened to the Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
Um, thank you for engaging with us. I hope that you got a thing or two, an insight or two from what we've been talking today. And we'd also like to remind you that Infinite Care is here for you. And if you need to talk to someone, chat with someone, have someone listen to you and empathize with you, you could log in to your Infinite Care app, chat with our care chat team, or book a counseling session with our counselors, or book a coaching session with our coaches. We're just
Yeah.
here to listen. So thank you very
Yeah.
much,
Thank you,
everybody, and hope to
everybody.
see you. Hope to see you in the next sessions. Shine, thank you
Mhm.
for
Thank you
joining
to
us today.
Anne. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Have a
you.
nice
Bye.
evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.